In the era of massive AAA titles that can pack in over 30 plus, 40 plus, 80 plus hours of complex and layered gameplay, sometimes it's nice to go back to basics. Back to a time of simple side-scrolling, minimal movesets, and challenging as hell environments and enemies. That is what precisely Canary Games' Lunark delivers. Lunark is a modern take on the 2D cinematic platformer genre, akin to 1989's Prince of Persia on the SNES, or more closely, 1993's Flashback. So how does this retro-inspired game hold up to today's gaming standards? Well, let's find out. Lunark kicks off by immediately throwing you into a rich sci-fi story and setting. Players take the role of Leo, a courier with unique abilities and a mysterious past, whose life is forever changed after one seemingly simple retrieval mission. From there, Lunark's narrative is a sci-fi domino effect, with each event and location triggering the next. It reminded me a lot of Blade Runner, and not just for the setting, I'm talking the way the story is structured as well. Additionally, you can choose to engage that story as much or as little as you like. You can learn a lot about the sci-fi world you're immersed in by talking to NPCs and engaging with the environment, or on the opposite end of the spectrum, you can easily breeze through area only investigating the basic beats of the narrative. The choice is yours, which is actually something I kind of love to see in games. Obviously, I'm not getting into spoilers, but there were some moments in Lunark where I was genuinely surprised by the twists and turns the game took. And that's pretty cool considering my expectations were of a simpler game with simpler mechanics and a simpler story, and what I got was really fun and complex and interesting. Speaking of that simpler gameplay, like the retro titles it emulates, Lunark's gameplay is relatively simple. Throughout each level, Leo can run, jump, climb, descend, roll, and interact with unique objects, environments, and the people around him. Combat is not the focus of this game, but when you do run into it, Leo can utilize a pistol and shields to maneuver sticky situations. However, it's harder than it sounds. Your shield cells are easily depleted and your gun has to be recharged, so there is some thought that goes into navigating combat. And thought should be the keyword here. Lunark is not that kind of platformer built around fluid, running, jumping, constant movement. It requires thought, both in your actions and in the button commands. Like I said, it's imitating the games of this sort of genre from the past, which means it can be a little clunky. Oftentimes, Leo has to be in just the right location for an action to work. If you're not, Leo will give you a "this ain't it" boss head shake animation, or hilariously slam himself into a wall. This level of precision is particularly needed for climbing, jumping, and descending. If you're not perfectly precise in your button timing and movements, you'll most likely end up falling off a platform and dying. A lot. I mean, a lot. The fall damage in this game is utterly lethal. Even the smallest drop can result in your death, thus flinging you back to the last checkpoint, which is often inconvenient. And Lunark has a somewhat inconsistent checkpoint system. Sometimes you'll be restarted in the room you just died in, other times you're flung several areas back, forcing you to repeat rooms of platforming and combat. The discordant checkpoint system, along with the controls, can sometimes make it a little more frustrating than fun. Thankfully, the frustration is eased by the ability to upgrade your pistol or your health thanks to the power of hugs. Yeah, that's a real thing. The character's name is Hug. And once you bring him 3 shells, he grants you additional health by hugging you. 10 out of 10 game design, if you ask me. And speaking of game design, each level is refreshingly unique and different from the last. It makes exploration and progression more fun and exciting. Like, it's really easy for platformers to have similar level designs and just sort of different pixelated skin wrapped on top of them. But in Lunark, I found myself navigating a high-speed futuristic train in one level, and then was immediately thrust into a dark underground cavern in the next. And overall, despite the clunkiness I mentioned, Lunark still manages to deliver a compelling and creative gameplay experience. And that experience, of course, is carried heavily by Lunark's stellar art design. After you've loaded into the first area, you instantly pick up on the game's retro influences, specifically its rotoscoped animation. It's just another aspect of the game where you can see obvious flashback nods. And it's fun, because the model for Leo's cutscenes is none other than the creator. There's even like a cool featurette that breaks down how he did it himself, and I highly recommend checking it out after this review. It really is a game that, despite being released in 2023, this animation style in combination with the pixel graphics of the game gives Lunark this timeless 90s retro feel. And in an era where most games are trying so hard to edge closer and closer to realistic looking graphics, it's kind of refreshing. I love it when a game fully commits to an aesthetic, and Lunark knocks it out of the pixelated park. So in summary, while Lunark can sometimes be challenging, it makes up for its retro gameplay choices with compelling story and great art design. The entire Canary Games team really created a true spiritual successor to all those retro cinematic platformers of yesteryear. And as I played Lunark, it was like being transported back to my childhood gaming days in front of the TV, just a little too close. If you're looking for a fun, retro-inspired cinematic game that will kick your ass in the most fun of ways, then this is the game for you. Lunark is currently available on PC via Steam, Nintendo Switch, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X.